roaring 1920s, sunny California became the scene of a series of heinous crimes that shook the nation. The Wineville Chicken Coop Murders was a string of kidnappings and murders of young boys that haunted the city of Los Angeles. But one case in particular stood out. Christine Ida Collins, born Christine Ida Dunn on December 14, 1888, in Los Angeles, California, had her life marked not by what came before, but by what became of her after her name was splashed across the headlines of the country. Daughter of Clara and Francis Dunn, the family frequently traveled between California and Hawaii before finally settling in Seattle. As an adult, Christine decided to return to the city where she was born and began working as a manager at a local telephone company. It was there that she met Walter J. Collins, a con man and thief who went by the alias Walter Joseph Anson. He was a former convict who worked for the Los Angeles trolley system at the time. Christine eventually married Walter, and in September 1918, while living in the nearby Lincoln Heights neighborhood, she gave birth to her first and only child, Walter Collins. In 1923, Christine's life was turned upside down when her husband was sentenced to the Folsom State Prison for armed robbery. He eventually died in prison and was buried in the prison cemetery. Living alone, on the fateful Wednesday afternoon of March 10, 1928, Christine sent Walter, then 9 years old, to the movies in the Mountain Washington neighborhood of Los Angeles. Despite the apparent danger, it was common at the time for children to walk the streets alone during the day or night. Unfortunately, that was the last time Christine saw her son. She asked neighbors about his whereabouts, and some said they had seen him at a nearby gas station. Others claimed to have seen him on streets far from where his mother allowed the boy to go. The clues were multiplying and leading Christine further and further afield. Until, exhausted and too desperate to continue alone, 5 days later she finally reported her son's disappearance to the authorities. The police launched a search for Walter under intense media pressure, as 3 months earlier a girl named Marion Parker had been kidnapped and murdered in Los Angeles. Her case gained national attention primarily because the police failed to apprehend the suspect despite the many leads and evidence. With Walter, it was no different. In fact, it was even worse. The boy's face was plastered on every newspaper in the city. Hundreds of potential witnesses sent in their statements with possible leads, but none of them led anywhere. Meanwhile, the police maintained the idea that the boy had simply run away. When a neighbor named Baker claimed to have seen Walter in the back seat of a car asking to get out in the company of 2 strangers, Christine was certain that her son had been kidnapped. In the meantime, other children began to disappear and Walter became the focus of a major police operation. The police began to face growing negative publicity as public pressure mounted to solve the cases or at least point to someone at fault. 5 long months had passed of intense investigation without a single trace of the boy emerging from the shadows. Christine, despite fighting to keep hope alive, saw herself broken inside. The weight of uncertainty undermined her ability to work, sleep, or take care of herself. Christine wilted under the burden of this tireless search, losing 10 pounds along the way. But she persisted, an indefatigable force who maintained regular visits to the police station, instilling courage in the officers not to give up, even when everything seemed chaotic. Then, on that fateful day of August 28, 1928, in the same year that Walter disappeared, the Los Angeles Police Department received a call from distant DeKalb, Illinois. The DeKalb police reported that they had in custody a boy whose characteristics aligned with Walter's and that he himself claimed to be the missing boy. The news was a ray of hope for the authorities, as this was the opportunity to silence the accusations of inefficiency that hung over them. A miracle seemed to be unfolding in Christine's life, but that miracle would require an exchange of letters and photographs before she could finally lay eyes on the boy in person. The police organized a public meeting to end the bad publicity surrounding them once and for all. When the boy stepped off the train, in front of everyone, reality was revealed, shocking and horrifying Christine. That wasn't Walter, and she shouted it for all to hear. Captain J.J. Jones tried to convince her that time and experiences had changed the boy, but Christine didn't waver. She knew the son she had brought into the world and cared for 9 years of her life. The crowd erupted into chaos, and to avoid a public humiliation, the captain convinced Christine to take the boy home, conduct a simple test, and allow her memories to clarify in her mind, already shaken by pain. Pressured by public opinion and the police department, the mother agreed to accept the impostor as her son, at least temporarily. Before allowing Christine to take the alleged son home, the police and doctors interrogated the child incessantly about his whereabouts, how he had arrived in Illinois, and, above all, about the kidnapper. However, the boy could only provide a confusing and incoherent story. Still, the authorities, taken by the euphoria of the possible resolution, chose to accept the narrative. Meanwhile, isolated with the boy who was not her son and who terrified her, Christine faced the terrible prospect that they would stop looking for her real Walter. Despite this, she endured 3 long weeks of care, bathing, and living with the boy who remained silent. His unfathomable gaze drove her mad, leading her to question if that, in some way, could be her Walter. Finally, exhausted and on the verge of a nervous breakdown, Christine turned to her son's dental records to prove the difference between Walter and the impostor. With evidence in hand, she went to Captain Jones, but to her surprise, he refused to believe her version. The officer even went so far as to insinuate that Christine was trying to defame the police department with her accusations. Accusing her of slander and under the pretext of containing her words, the officer invoked the infamous Code 12, which allowed the detention of anyone considered disobedient to an order, and ordered that Christine be immediately incarcerated in the psychiatric ward of the Los Angeles General Hospital. Christine Collins was accused of being in the midst of a psychotic break and unable to accept her motherhood. The treatment she received was inhumane, her senses obscured by medications intended for schizophrenic patients. Her mood was stifled, her hunger denied, and, in distressing moments, they subjected her to shock therapy. Almost 3 weeks after her internment, Christine was about to succumb to the captain's pressure when a surprising news turned the tables. The boy who claimed to be Walter confessed that he was a hoax. His real name was Arthur Hutchins. He was only 12 years old and admitted that he pretended to be the missing boy to get to Los Angeles, with the dream of meeting movie stars and, who knows, becoming an actor. Christine was released and, yet, she was back to square one. Walter remained missing, with no clues, with nothing. And then, a terrifying twist shook Christine Collins's life again. In Riverside County, California, about 25 miles from Los Angeles, police arrested a serial killer named Gordon Stewart Northcott, who would become world famous for the horrors he committed, known as the Wineville Chicken Coop Murders. At Gordon's ranch, the bodies of several children kidnapped and killed by him and his mother were discovered. Sarah Northcott, the killer's mother, confessed to the imprisonment and murder of Walter Collins, as well as her son. Discredited, Christine traveled to Riverside to investigate further. In the midst of all the mutilated bodies, there was no evidence linking Walter to the crime scene, unlike the other victims. Emotionally devastated, but still hopeful that her son was alive, Christine insisted on talking to Gordon. Despite having confessed earlier, he denied any involvement in Walter's death, and Christine chose to believe him. She became the first American woman, in over 3 decades, to visit a serial killer on the eve of his execution. As compensation for her suffering, Captain Jones was legally required to pay Christine about $11,000, but he never fulfilled his promise. In addition, he received only 4 months suspension for what he inflicted on the woman. 5 years after Gordon's execution, one of the surviving victims was found. David Clay revealed that Walter was one of the children who had been with him in Wineville. They tried to escape together, but they ended up separating. This news injected a new dose of hope into Christine's heart, and she never stopped looking for Walter. During Gordon's trial, the killer's nephew, 14-year-old Sanford Clark, whispered to Christine, "I saw you in the newspapers, you must have incredible strength." That monumental strength led director Clint Eastwood to honor her in a 2008 film starring Angelina Jolie, entitled Changeling. On December 8, 1964, Christine Collins passed away, never having found her son, but also never having given up looking for him. Her spirit and her tireless struggle remained as a testament to love and perseverance that will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this video with those who like true crime stories.